Good morning. My name is Constance Thurmond. I am the founder and principal of Kora Insights, where we partner with emerging managers to provide year-round programmatic solutions that unlock capital from both their portfolio companies and LPs. Whether you're a startup founder, whether you are an emerging manager, we help you build community in a way that is authentic to you and that ultimately strengthens the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Today, I have the pleasure of being here with Sergio Marrero, who is the managing director of Blue Ridge Labs, where they work with entrepreneurs who solve the world's most pressing social challenges. No big deal.
That's our goal. Yeah.
And with that, before we delve into your amazing background and also what you're doing, I would love to know what has been your favorite thing to do this summer outside of work?
Oh man, favorite thing to do. Enjoying the beautiful weather, walking around, actually taking my daughters too. I shared that, and taking her outside to the park and running around, simple things,
I love
like that. So yeah.
Is she like a swings child or a seesaw or none of the above?
It's swings and slide, run around.
Swings and slide.
She'll run around.
Yeah.
She can't play basketball yet, but she's waiting.
She will.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
We'll check in on that in a couple years
Exactly.
and see how that's going.
Exactly. She's the basketball is half the size of her, but it's when she gets a little bigger, yes.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I too also love swings and slides. So glad that we have that in common. So Sergio, I'm going to get a little bit into your background.
Sure.
And we'll just delve into it. So you lead the Blue Ridge teams at Robin Hood. And previously, you led the George Shultz Innovation Fund at the University of Chicago to help scientific founders turn their innovations into ventures. And then you also founded Rebel One, which is an investor community that was focused on accelerating diversity in venture capital and entrepreneurship. And I want to pause us for a second in that part of your professional journey, just because I imagine there's a lot of learnings that you've had from building many things. I know you just haven't built this, but building many things throughout the course of your career. And so with that, I would love to learn, why did you decide to build a global investor community at the time that you did?
Yeah, good question. At that time, I had, and to take us probably one step back, I was a founder focused on edtech and specifically the skill force gap or the skill gap, helping individuals that didn't have a college degree get incremental training to earn more money, and the startup we were working on ended up, not getting the traction we needed. So I shifted, took a pause, and ended up using my kind of teaching skills and education background to, I created a founder curriculum, and that evolved into someone actually that started a syndication, a group, said, hey, could you take that training and train investors? And I kind of fell into being an investor. That I said I can, and I started doing that. And it was the same knowledge, just from a different lens. So thinking like a founder, training investors to think like founders, and analyze the different pieces of what they need to do and how they need to build. And then Rebel One was, it really started as just a brand to organize the different things I was doing. To being honest, at the time I was doing consulting, syndications, doing the education, and then it kind of took off in terms of community. We focused at the time. This was before COVID and George Shultz, and there was the heavier focus on equity. There was a larger number of people that I had connected to had been, underrepresented, whether it be women investors, Latinx, Black, and we talked about how do we get the experience and connections to get into investment roles. So bringing that together, and that became the motivation and basis for starting Rebel One.
Wow. And thank you for that context, because it adds so much so much good information too of just your process as a founder to then working on the investment side, because sometimes it's not, I want to be an investor immediately. It's very much like, I saw this quote and I love this. And it's like, when you are a founder, you're working on a problem. And when you're an investor, you're working on a problem set. And in many ways, I think that you've done both throughout your career. And with this, to what you're saying, like you saw gaps in the ecosystem and you actively, through your education background, were working to make sure that people had that context and knowledge that is needed realistically when you're building a community and a network and a business that's based on networks. And with that, I would love to know from your experience, what were some of the common inflection points of the investors that you worked with and the emerging managers that you worked with, where you saw people either succeed or fail? And I say that in quotation because obviously I would love to know what success or failure means to you in this context with in the emerging manager circuit.
Yeah, that's a great question. Just because, and to take a step back as well, I think venture capital it has become really sexy. Everyone wants to. They're like, I want to start a fund. I want to, join a VC. There are many ways to taking a step back, thinking yourself, do I want to invest, or like what's the outcome of what I'm trying to achieve? Do I just want to get into venture, or am I looking to make the biggest impact that I can, and what's the right way to do that?
Right.
So meaning you could work in a large company, take some of your income, right? Or you can and you can invest as an angel, right? And that might be just as impactful as joining a small venture shop. It is the number of venture roles compared to the number of people who want to get into them is very, like it's just very competitive. And I actually think now with the number, when I started Rebel One, there weren't that many accessible solutions, right? Or there weren't many places to go for folks, emerging fund managers, to start and just learn, like, how do I invest? What does that look like? And I can run down like the tactical things, right? Of seeing deals every day, having a clear deal flow process, having a deal flow tracker, like all those, having a clear investment memo and all of that. Like that is just basics. And now, and what we did is we codified a curriculum and we started to do that. And we ended up like training. I ended up training more than 1,000 folks through over several years. Some of our foundational training is and Medium posts are still used by the Harlem Capitals and the other training programs, like Diversity VC actually used our training for several years. HBCU VC used our training. So we became almost like a textbook foundational. And, I think at that point when the ecosystem, there were many more people focused on the problem, I think that's where I started to shift and saying, okay, I think the good work is still happening. Where else can I go make the biggest impact?
Yeah, so, absolutely. And wow, first of all, congratulations. 1,000 founders having gone through your curriculum. And
1,000 investors.
Excuse me, not founders. Thank you. Going through your curriculum and that kind of impact that you had with the actual content you were producing and the frameworks that are being used, I imagine is... Yeah, that's really special to hear. And I just want to make sure that I understand clearly as well, like for the folks that you did work with, right? Those 1,000 investors going through, like what were, just those pieces where you felt like were easier, were more challenging in terms of what you saw for success for them? Like were folks able to go through the curriculum, for example, and then go off and get the LP investment that they needed, or have these funds that still exist? Like, what was just kind of your experience in actually seeing
the
that
bottleneck?
Through?
What the bottleneck is.
Thank you.
Because I think, looking at, because you're right, and looking at the statistics, while the knowledge and resources in these programs, like, and even your podcast, right? It's like that has become much more accessible, and there are more people that are just better. There are still the same amount of capital, if not less, is going into underrepresented founders. There are more female investors, but partners in venture capital, but pretty much similar representation, like not dramatically different across the area. And you're like, okay, what's really holding the system back? Really, it's the limited partners. And like money has to go toward founders that are trained up but may look different. And when I say look different, I don't mean only like Black and Latino, right? Or women founders. What I'm also saying is for folks that you have to be open to excellence looking and your milestones looking different. So example, if historically there are less underrepresented folks in investment banking and you're an LP and you only invest in folks that have gone through investment banking, like you should ask yourself, should that be the indicator or should that be the bar? Or I'm using investment banking as a measure of excellence when being a former founder can be a measure of excellence. Right. Being an angel investor, a serial angel investor can be a measure of excellence. Like being, like there are other, they're gonna be unconventional paths, and you need to be open to, we look at this for founders, but I call it the delta. Like how much did people learn based on where they started, and if that is very high, like you should invest in that.
I love that. So. I love that. And for the LPs listening, that kind of delta that you're encouraging and some of the things that you spoke to, whether it be career background or whether it be and thinking about paths that have been outside of the box, are there any other pointed areas that you would encourage them to look at or think through? That's
a good question. So if they're looking at characteristics, I would ask them, like, what are other types of excellence you're looking at? Let me take a step back. It's like two things I would look at is where are they sourcing for folks. The other is how are they measuring excellence. Maybe the third, if I were to add a third, is looking at their delta, right? If somebody's been an investor now and maybe previously they didn't even have a college degree, right? And they worked their way into doing that. That's an indicator of progression and grit and accomplishing things that haven't been done before. And I think that like valuing that just as much as the investment banking is important. Concepts that I haven't seen implemented at the LP level, I would say are twofold. If LPs are serious about getting more emerging fund managers in the game, they would have more apprenticeship roles, period. Right? And what does that look like? Like the hardest part for an early stage emerging fund manager is to get, I say, like notches on the belt, to say, hey, I was a part of making these $3 million investments and they did well. And if there are apprenticeship roles where they're doing real work, like they're getting compensated for it, they're not volunteers, right? Yes. So you're employing them, right? You're employing them to do real work. So you're not, it's not a charity, but the role is such that someone comes in, maybe it's 1 or 2 years, they do a couple deals, they get that under their belt, they get that experience, they get those accolades and attribution that they can claim, and then somebody else comes in. I haven't seen that as much, and I think that that should be like that. I think that's low hanging fruit that I'm not seeing many LPs exercise, or they're doing it in quiet, and in private spaces. I think the second is, again, the venture model right now, and this is like bigger macroeconomic, valuations are inflated. There's less money going into early stage venture investment. People are questioning that early stage model because the return on investment isn't what it was because it did get flooded with large number of people and just the valuations are hyped. So what does that mean? It means that the new class of venture capitalists are actually going to have to innovate on how they make investments. It's not going to be an equity investment for, a 2 and 20 model. And for those listening, 2 and 20, like 2% management fee, 20% carry. It's going to be venture debt. It's going to be revenue-based finance. It's going to be different instruments, and LPs need to be, that's the second thing, is they need to be open and look for innovative models of investment that are better meeting the needs of founders and also aligned to the ROI. But if they're going to continue to invest in the same model, the 2 and 20 model that, frankly has roots, if you do some of the history in for decades, and if not more, that they're just going to get more of the same, and it's actually not going to be, you're not creating the future funds. You're not backing the most innovative managers.
Ooh, Sergio, you just dropped some real gems. You heard it here first on the Kora Insights podcast. I love what you said, and I want to focus on one question that I have for you following that. So there is, as you're saying, this emphasis that I've also been seeing where LPs are saying, like, we want liquidity sooner.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And I laugh secretly because I ask myself, like, how do you get that without the models that you're speaking to that have
the models have to change.
Right, the models have to change.
They just have to change. Yeah.
Okay, so is that what you would say?
And that's exactly. It's like they're more likely to invest in, I'm just saying, if you're talking about emerging fund managers, going back to that, a person who was an analyst and then a senior analyst and then and ends up being a principal at X fund that did early stage investing and invested in Series A, and it was a 2 and 20 model. And when they leave, what are they doing? They're doing early stage investing, and they're investing in the 2 and 20. Why? Because they have the history of doing that, and the LP's like, oh, I'm not going to invest in them doing anything different because that is what they learned before, and but then it doesn't allow them to be creative. It doesn't allow them to create, I've talked about, some of these things like revenue-based financing and the venture debt, they're not new, but we don't have enough funds that are creative models in that way. There is a component, there are some regulatory constraints, of course, related to the, I'm not, again, it's not legal advice, and I'm not an accountant, but related to actually being a venture fund and not having the same reporting requirements. But that doesn't mean that they can't still start backing some of these founders that are just coming up with different models.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's really, really good. Yeah. And I appreciate just all this wisdom that you're sharing, because it's, as you're saying, it's like, if you want to see change and you want to have different types of returns and models, then you also have to be willing to look at that delta that you spoke to that is not going to feel comfortable at first, and do your research and obviously know that the emerging manager is who they say they are. But
and I think even if LPs, like, if there are any LPs listening, it's like, yes, there are a bunch of models, but even if you're like, all right, tell me a solution I should back, like, give me something concrete, there aren't enough revenue-based financing funds, period. So let's, also on the other side, there needs to be more founder education, because now founders want venture capital and like you said, like, the LPs and emerging fund managers want more liquidity, and there's a disconnect there. So I think revenue-based financing and similar solutions, or even debt-based funds, are actually can meet the need there, and we need to back more founders we need to back more emerging fund managers doing those funds.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, I'm so inspired. I'm so inspired. I'm learning a lot. I kind of want to focus for a second before we delve, and this is actually such a good transition, because you work with founders.
Yeah.
You work with founders actively in your role at Blue Ridge. But before we go there, I do want to talk to you a bit about the community side of things, and specifically when it comes to these emerging managers. when does it make sense for them to build community? And whether we're referring to that as programming or referring to that as events, ultimately, if the end goal for those who may be listening is to raise from LPs because they're talented, because they're doing the work, and they want to create and foster this community that can further feed into that, from your experience, when does that make sense, or when does it not make sense?
I think whether you want to say you're building community or not, when you start, like right when you start investing, you are building some community. So whether it be the founders you're investing in, and that may want to be a part of your network, that's like that's a community. You could say the community of investors that are going to co-invest hopefully co-invest once a founder either leaves your orbit or you put that investment that's going to help them persist, because it takes more than one investor to usually to help the founder get to the stage they need to get at. Right. So I would say right away, I would say for us at Blue Ridge, and before I go into Blue Ridge Labs, it's also, you have to gauge like what is you don't want it to be a force fit. What is the natural community that you should be you should anchor around and within. So one example, if you're a founder, focus on I'll use Vamos Ventures, Marcos and their team. Love the work they're doing. They're focused on underrepresented broadly with an emphasis on Latino founders. So like that is where they are. They're in and around like events like that. They're bringing that community together. They're partnering with other organizations that like Black VC and what have you to bring the broader community together. So, they're playing their part. If you're focused on an industry, you could bring people together around the industry. And for Blue Ridge Labs, our focus is uplifting communities in need. Specifically, we say LMI, low-income communities, and economic development or economic mobility is our focus. So we involve, like, we have a extended community of people that are just everyday New Yorkers that are struggling to find housing or get health care or find a job. And those folks, we engage them to work with our founders. They actually help us to decide who we invest in. They are just a part of the work that we do, and that's just a type of community, and that's probably the most unique part about and that's how our I would say our investment strategy, our impact investing is unique, but every investor it's different for them. They should think about like where they naturally fit.
But to that point, and tying it together with the delta, like if I were an LP and I saw, for example, like your model, right, of bringing together your actual community that your founders are building products for and with in mind, I think to myself, like, look, they're doing the work. They're close to the founders. And
exactly.
So they're the ones who are going to understand the most, like, what's feasible in terms of going back to like a very black and white metric, like an investment timeline or a return timeline, because they're speaking with these folks day in and day out. And that's part of why I'm so excited that you're here, and I wanted to speak with you in the first place, because actually I'm gonna throw us back to something which I think you'll find entertaining, but before we go into Blue Ridge Labs more, but you have been doing this work for a while, and I want to take us back to your studies at Harvard Business School. Okay. And Harvard Kennedy on startup studios and accelerating the launch of social enterprises, which, by the way, Sergio, you're one of those rare people who has had the privilege of studying and executing and now actively working in what
that
you're
is
doing.
It is true. It was I say folks ask me they're like, oh, can you tell me about your career path? And I was like, no, it only makes sense looking backwards. Just because when I started and, I did the research, launched my tech startup, yes, I wanted it to be, become a outlying success, and then
Naturally.
and then when I ended up in founder training, and then ended up in investing, but didn't, but was doing investor training, and then one step led to another, and I kind of fell into just kept following the focus of making an impact, of being okay, where should I be that this is aligned to impact. So feel very lucky to be leading Blue Ridge Labs and that team and that community.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great work. So,
I love that. I love that. And also for our listeners of all ages.
That's
Sergio,
right.
looking back, you have a very inspiring career path. And I think that through line of the impact piece is one that it sounds like a North Star for you. And so.
And it's hard. It's hard to stay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to stay focused.
Yes,
so, sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to read to you a direct quote from your TED Talk.
Okay.
In 2018, on building startups and shaping the future. Here you go. Through startup factories, we can accelerate the pace of launching new ventures and more easily bring startups into the world. Those who take on this challenge will not only outcompete, but will have the opportunity to shape the world. So, Sergio, has this quote stood the test
Man, I
of
haven't
time?
heard that. I haven't heard that quote in a long time. I think in a real way, I do think startup, the word startup studio, although not as common, and what does that mean to folks that's new? It's a place where, different people will say different things. How I interpret it as, it's a place where startups originate or they're born, right? And so, you might have founders come in and they're creating these new products, new solutions from scratch. I feel lucky in that I'm at one of those places. Blue Ridge Labs is that. We're a venture studio, focus on impact, and we have programs that welcome individuals who are aspiring founders to launch those ventures. And that's the Founder Fellowship, where, as I shared, we're in the middle of one of our cycles, and where we have about 50 plus folks come in, and then it gets narrowed down to about 25 right now that are the end, to go from, we say, 0 to MVP, minimum viable product. And that's the intent over about a 16-week period. That's 16 weeks versus what it usually takes is 2 to 3 years, is how do you speed that up? I think now with AI and all the tools that are evolving at breakneck pace, it's becoming more and more possible. And it's an amazing, it's an amazing time. I would say, even compared to a year ago,
Wow.
where, we're seeing, we're just seeing amazing results. So.
To clarify, what's becoming more possible is their ability to get from 0 to MVP in a quicker timeline, or what are you referring to when you say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We've spent the last couple of years refining our programs, increasing seats to serve more people, because the more people we have, the more ventures will be created, and the more, community members are impacted, right? So it's it ripples through that, but it all starts with the founders for us.
Yeah.
And that is that's the core focus, is helping those founders get the tools they need. Some are can give an example. They're just experts in their field, from from substance abuse issues to affordable housing, and they have a vision for the thing they want to create, and they may not know the tech skills, or they may not be fully connected, and that's our job, is to equip them as quickly as possible. We can't do everything. We give them about 20K, and we give them a bunch of training and try to connect them in the short period of time. But that's and the results, right, are for us in terms of the volume. We've had about call it. We also have another program called Catalyst, which is we think think YC for impact, right? Like that's what Catalyst is intended. So it's those two programs, and from that we're supporting upwards of like 20 plus founders a year, probably net like around 10. Our goal is like 10 to 15 new ventures a year, which is hard to do. I think the hardest part, and that kind of is a nod to the future, is helping them sustain themselves like after we after our programs. And it wouldn't happen without, going back to the community of investors around us looking at the people coming out of the programs to invest in. So that it just, we're all playing a different part, and that ultimately creates the impact we want to see.
I love that. I love that too, because from founder to, first of all, there's such a powerful piece from founder to founder, right? It's like when you are in this cohort building relationships with other people who care at large, not necessarily on the specific exact same problem, but on the, let's say, problem set that you're working on, there's so much desire to see when each other succeed, which is going to be in my experience, the long lasting impact beyond the duration of your program too, right? So you have the community of investors, you have the community of general entrepreneur support, but then you also have the founders helping each other, which like cannot be manufactured. Like if you want to put out a vulnerable question that you're going to have probably 50 times a day as a founder, because there's so much you don't know, there's so much you're learning, and you want that to extend beyond like what you've built within the program, then you need to rely on the community. Right? How have you, like, within that, on a practical level, like, when, as you're saying, so you spoke to this, like, you have events and you have community because you understand the role that it plays in supporting the founder too beyond the duration of your program. I guess on a practical level, like, what does this look like? Like, do you have a certain amount of events per year, or how do you think through that? And are they primarily in person or virtual? And would love to learn more about that. Good question.
I would say we have the privilege of, we have a physical space. Not many places do. The Robin Hood Foundation has provided funding for an incubator space and we have a range of folks working out of that space. And I think that I start with that in terms of what does it look like for us, because in the world where we are just much more virtual after COVID, like remote work is just much more common, and because we're dealing with these tough problems, I think everybody defaults to saying, oh, I can work virtually, I could do it over Zoom. But when you're working with these messy problems and you need to iterate really fast, like the richest medium is being in person. So for our programs, we have components that are virtual, but we also have components where we're a little old school. We're like, you need to come in. And I actually tell them, I was like, we concentrate all this stuff it's like of the 5 days a week, like 2 days of the program usually. And because we want structure, serendipitous interactions, and it won't happen unless everybody comes in. Right. And then at the end, so I say they come for the money and they end up staying for the community all the time. That's what happens. It's like, they're like, all right, great, like fantastic, I'll participate. They're coming every week. And I've had founders the last program like teared up, and I was totally, I was totally surprised, but that's what happens when you keep bringing people together. So, I didn't completely answer your question. I talked about like the physical space, but it ends up, I can share more if you want me to on the because I'm an operator on the like mechanics of it.
Yeah, no, I would actually love if you can expand, and that's beautiful first and foremost. I'm like, and as someone who has been an outsider insider, a friend of Blue Ridge Labs, and has gone to one of your networking events, I could just say how much people have advocated for you when you're not there and not in the room. Actually, I've met some of your founders outside of the context of Blue Ridge Labs as well, and to me, one of the biggest testaments of your work is the fact that folks rave about it when you're not in the room.
Awesome.
And I'm like,
I'm glad to hear it.
Sergio, how do you do it? You know, because I think that is like, that to me is a huge delta, right? That is a huge measure of success. That when you're in the community or programmatic space can be hard to measure for a PowerPoint, for a ROI metric, for a KPI. Yeah. But it's there. And so I think, you know, if we have other folks who are listening who are either in the nonprofit space or who are in the just like accelerator or incubator space, like would love to know on the operational side, like what you're thinking through, or just like practical pieces of that as well. Yeah, good question. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think it's something that I'll tell you what we don't measure. What do we put like less on the hook, but we know folks we appreciate our the real heroes are the founders. They're the ones doing the hard work of launching the ventures from scratch, going through this nebulous process to like constantly like keep trying until something they get product market fit, something like clicks, and they get the traction they need to like move forward, whether nonprofit or for profit. Like it's the same. And then what's tough also is while I constantly say our goal is to create successful and impactful ventures that scale, and not to make the founders happy. And what's tough is like sometimes that love comes through is like, so what I mean is it takes a lot to sit down and tell a founder what they need to hear, but they may not want to hear it, or it actually may not click till 3 to 6 months after the program. So they're going to leave not feeling 110%, but then later they're going to come back. And so I'll give you an example of that is like, even we're big on feedback, and that feedback is a gift. Like that's like something like we even to us, and it's and we see it cycle by cycle. But that's one thing that it's like there's like a values set of things that like keep the community focused. So beyond the mechanics that are core to us. But to speak to the mechanics, because you asked about some of those, we have an annual cycle. We have the physical space, right? And our annual cycle really starts in like the April-May timeframe, where we release applications for our fellowship program. And then those folks apply, and then we get a narrowed set where we've been adapting year to year, but and right now this is what it is. It may evolve, but that program, there's phase 1 during the summer, and the summer we do it virtually, and we have summer residents in the space. So coming into the space during the summer is optional, because sometimes folks are traveling and they're everywhere. Smart, your city. Yeah, it's like knowing, and then from that, the top 25 will come into the fellowship, and the fellowship's in the fall, and the phase 2 of the fellowship will be in the fall. So and then again, that whole process from the and beginning of the summer to the end is they have a demo day at the end of that in November, and that's all to get folks from the zero user research with our design insight group, our community members, to an MVP that serves them. And then our next cycle, the accelerator catalyst, that starts in February and runs through June. And then that process repeats. So that's our like overall structure, big
what are things we have? We integrate it into the programs. We have founders coming in. We have our happy hour events. We have report out sessions that are part of every program where actually the founders we're bringing together are critiquing each other. That's actually a big part. Yep, it's a huge part of it's not about my expertise and the team's expertise, although they're very skilled. It's this collective hive that helps it going, and that's through all the programs. So that's a thread that we have. So those are like different components that keep when we talk about feedback, you can see how feedback is integrated into all those pieces. So we have the 2 demo days, and then what we just had, that's between phase 1 and 2 of our founder fellowship, is our ideas fair, and that is a curated set of judges and experts that are aligned to each domain area, so like healthcare, affordable housing, and what have you, giving feedback again to these founders. So it's about like that accelerated networking. And on top, I know I talked about a lot of the mechanics, but the other part that I would say one year we've oscillated is sometimes we also do some fun things. We go to South by Southwest as a part of our Catalyst program. We've had the privilege of doing that the last 2 years. We've gone to Daybreaker events as a group. For those that don't know,
that's freeing. Dance.
It's like dance. It's so because being a founder is hard, and people need to relax and de-stress.
Yes.
And also they talk about it being lonely. It's such a challenge to like build an organization with 1 to 3 people. At least the stage that we're serving, and so bringing them together in a community so that they can support each other is really impactful. So all of those like different elements like coming together, I say they're like Lego pieces. You put them together, and that creates like the kind of community and the engine that yep.
I'm like, clearly Sergio doesn't have a busy schedule.
No. Yes, keeps me on my toes. But yes.
And your team, obviously. Yes. Shout out to the team.
They're incredible. I feel very lucky to have found and assembled a good team. Funny aside, we had Robinhood had we had a department meeting, and somebody asked we went around the room and asked, who would run for mayor given the chance? And people were going around, and I was like, well, my first gut reaction was like, no, I don't want to do that. And then actually what I said, and my team like froze. I was like, if my team said yes, maybe, and like they I would do it if they were all like, let's do it, and they all froze like, oh my God, and that's, I feel that lucky that I would want to bring them with me where I went. Like they're great. So
wait, so did they say yes, you should run for mayor?
No. That's I didn't ask them because I didn't want to know the answer. Okay. I was like, we have work to do here.
Just making sure, given the time that we're in this particular city that we call home.
No, we have some excellent candidates. Whether people like them or not, we're ready to go.
Right. We're in track. We're on track. So yeah, I think to what you said, and all this, like, both like personal programming that like allows people to be themselves and to de-stress, and then also the formalities of like having a demo day where people get to have this amazing amount of feedback on a product that would normally take them months, for example, and that's condensed into a day. Obviously there's like many different types of, like, there's like a lot of mechanics behind each of those different types of categories of events, let's say, in programming. And so I think what I would ask you is, like, what advice would you give to other investors who maybe are in your space and also outside of your space, looking to build in this type of community into their strategy? And when I say this type of community, it doesn't have to be like specific. It's what you said, where like each person, depending on their thesis, is going to have a different need for their community. But I suppose I mean like at a general level.
Yeah. The challenge I would say, as they're thinking about building community, even for us, we have, I would say, clusters of stakeholders. And yes, they're all a part of the community, but I would say they're like just naturally being, being honest about that. Like we have communities within the overall community, and just understanding. I think the hardest thing for us even now is because we have different constituencies, is to decide who is most who are the folks that are most important that you want to serve, and for us it ends up being the founder. Like everything revolves around like how do we equip the founder, and then around that, so connecting them, and then around that, if I were to pick what are the three, it's like with the founder at the center, we have our design insight group, the actual members of the community that we're serving, and then we have our investors that help the founders beyond the program. And the three are in this, that the three of those groups, even though they may overlap in different capacities, are how we serve them. So it's and they all have a a role and a purpose. So it's, I think that's what I would say to folks deciding and figuring out like what they're doing. You can do an infinite number of things. It's just narrowing the focus and understanding how it aligns to your overall objective. Ours is to launch scalable tech ventures that create impact for communities in need. And if it doesn't align to that, although we would want to do it, we look to partners that we could support, that maybe they do that well, and we're just partnering with them. And so that's those are other ways that we've done that.
Yeah, that's so helpful. I think obviously you have the privilege, the responsibility, etc., of getting to serve this group of people, the founder specific. So as you're saying, like you get to work your way backwards and say like, the founder is my primary client, right? And so everything around that is going to be, is it serving them? Yes or no? If you were an emerging manager right now, and you had to ask yourself, who's my primary client, which in theory is the founder as well, but you also have the fundraising that you're doing.
Yes.
How would you answer that question with that context?
I think with it, as an emerging fund manager, I actually think you have to serve your, what is it? I say you serve who pays you. And even though LPs are giving you, and I say this to founders as well, you end up serving who pays you. Like, but even though LPs are giving you money to invest, like if the founders don't do well and that capital doesn't come back, like it doesn't work. So like that's what you need to balance, is like how do you serve the founders? How do you best equip them? And then for how do you serve the founders? How do you best equip them? I think that's what you should always ask. From the LP standpoint, it's really making it clear that the founders are who you're trying to serve.
Essentially.
It is. It just comes back. They're lending you starter capital. They're basically like, they're lending you starter capital, but it's about the founders. So understanding your cluster or community of founders and what's your unique way you're helping them.
Yeah, that's so good. And I appreciate that you're obviously able to step into these different shoes, right, given your experience.
Because I can give another example that's different. At University of Chicago, our founders weren't, I called them for, and for all my PhD founders out there that are at universities, like I lovingly refer you as diva founders. Like, why? Because you usually have a salary. Most founders starting out don't. You're an expert in your field. You're like already respected from the beginning, and it's that's a very nice place to start a venture. You're not worrying about where you're living or paying for the rest of your life, or like you're not, and then they want to start several ventures at one time. I was like, that's fantastic. And they were a different type of founder. They were, and in serving them at the university, it was a shift. But if you're an emerging fund manager starting a fund around them, you're going to come up with different things, right? What do they need training in? They probably need to think like a CTO, right? They need to find their CEO other, right? And so like what we were doing at the university, or what I was doing, is like I actually had to train up these like super smart PhD technologists, and we're talking about basic finance mechanics. It's like a MBA light 101, and then also letting them know is like, actually, if you love the technology, you need to find your business other, unless you want to grow into the CEO, and you need to make a choice. And that wasn't a paradigm they were used to. They were just used to, licensing tech to large, to large companies, and that mental shift of how the rest of the startup world works was what they needed, right? And so you just that's not every program. So that's what you have to really think about for yourself is. As your emerging fund manager, is who are the founders that I'm serving? Like, what do they uniquely need, and how do I win versus other investors?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, I'm laughing because I'm sure the PhDs listening are like, I do not live a cushy life on $40,000 a year. It's more than a lot of founders.
But it depends also on what type of PhD and all these things, and if they're in that's a longer story of a lot of them are in biotech, or let's say they're example, if you're starting an AI startup now and talent is very expensive, like just the amount of capital you need in economics to get that talent are going to be like very different. So that was just they're just a different breed.
Yeah. And it's good though, because that frame of reference is just totally different, and to your point, it requires like a different understanding of what community and ecosystem building means in that context. Okay. And so I am going to move us into a lightning round light.
Let's do it.
So it's not super lightning, it's medium lightning. Okay. So you can expand as you want. All right. So the first question is, when is your next event or program? And how do people get involved? We have a wide group of audience, different types of audiences listening to this. Okay. And so, for different folks.
Yeah, I'll start with how do people get involved. They go to our website, labs.robinhood.org, and you can click Get Involved, and we will, like, whether you're interested in one of our programs, you want to be a mentor, you want to invest, you want to be a donor, whatever it is, like from there we can, or you're a founder looking for funding, you go there, and it will connect you. So our website, labs.robinhood.org, that's how to get connected. Our next program coming up will be, stay on the lookout. We'll be announcing for our Catalyst program, our applicants, recruiting for the next class of our founders focused on impact. So our RYC for impact, that's we're recruiting the next all-stars to join us.
Yep, you won't want to miss it. The all-stars are indeed there at Blue Ridge Labs. It's true. It's absolutely true. And because, who we're focusing on for a second, if you are an investor who's interested in getting involved in Blue Ridge Labs, is it like an angel syndicate, or what does that look like?
We make introductions, direct investments. So
gotcha.
Okay. we do, whether if you're an angel, we can make intros there as well. But either way, we'll plug you in.
Love that. Here it is. All right. So who else do you admire in the ecosystem? Who you think is building community well? And any dream collaborators?
Good question. Who else do I admire in the ecosystem? I'm going to say Aaron Walker from Camelback Ventures and the Ruthless for Good Fund. Shout out to them. I respect the community he's built. I think a lot of founders have been in our community and theirs. And I just went to their Guardian Summit and have been a fan for a long time. And he's I respect his work. So I would say, and call him. I'm sure he has a lot of people that call him a friend, but I appreciate him and the work he's done.
I love that. And is he also a dream collaborator, or
I feel like we collaborate a good amount. Who's a dream collaborator?
And for what purpose would you?
For what purpose?
Yeah.
I would say a dream collaborator would maybe I'll leave it a little open, but I would say Blue Ridge Labs, where we have a model, we've been refining it, kind of like getting into our stride. Our dream collaborator is someone who is also an LP investor and says, hey, actually, I want you to take this and I want you to grow it. I want you to focus on healthcare. I want you to focus on education. Like, I want you to focus on the impact of affordable housing or climate, that wants to like amplify what we do. So and take it to the next level. I was like, all right, let's keep building. That's interested in doing that.
Got you. Any specific amount that we have, so that way folks who are listening have that in mind? Let's aim for the stars, Sergio. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. We're not here to be shy.
I was gonna say, I would flip. I would say, I'm not gonna put it. I have numbers, but I don't want to. I would say, like, this sky's the limit, and if some of these real problems, like, we can make a dent. We just need to commit. And get into it. So
okay, so I would say schedule one-on-one with Sergio if you're listening and you're seriously interested.
We're ready.
And he has a number in mind that I'm sure he will tell you.
It depends on the problem. That's the question. Do they want to check all the problems or one problem?
Right.
And then that's a different, and what's the outcome they're interested in as well. Like,
and this is why he's the managing director of Blue Ridge Labs. Yeah. There you have it. And so I would love to know any books or podcasts or recommendations that you have for folks who are listening, who are just interested in intentionally building, kind of like what we've spoken about today.
Oh man, any books? I feel like I need to. What's the book?
I'm terrible with names, by the way, so if you have vibes, we can look it up afterward and put it in the show notes.
Yeah. So. Loon Shots is one that's interesting for those that are building venture studios and things like that. Loon Shots talks about exactly that, like moonshots and how you build them. And so that's,
Loon, not moon. Loon.
Loon.
Okay, I don't know what
shots.
a loon shot is, but I'll learn by reading the book.
Yeah. So,
any last words of advice or anything else you would like to share before we wrap up?
No, just saying thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate you, welcoming me into this space. And this is important work. So thank you for contributing to the space.
Thank you, Sergio. Sergio Marrero, everyone, Managing Director of Blue Ridge Labs. Check out their work. They're doing amazing work based primarily here in New York City, and learn all about them and get involved should you feel called to. Thanks. Thanks, Sergio.